In the world we live in, many people confuse softness with weakness. The idea of being soft is often misunderstood as lacking strength, lacking courage, or lacking the ability to stand firm. But softness is not weakness. In fact, softness is one of the most profound expressions of strength. Weakness collapses under pressure. It gives in without resilience, it bends and does not rise again. Softness, on the other hand, bends with life, adapts, flows, and then rises again with even more clarity. To be soft means to be unshaken at the core while remaining fluid in response to the changing nature of existence. Think of water. Water is soft. It has no sharp edge, no rigid structure. It yields when you try to press it. Yet over time, water carves valleys into mountains. It wears down stone. It creates pathways where none existed before. Weakness would break against resistance, but water does not break. It transforms. It moves around obstacles and eventually shapes the world. This is the essence of softness. To be soft is to embody a quiet strength that does not need to shout, that does not need to prove itself, but reveals its power through presence and persistence. When a person lives with softness, they are not dominated by aggression or fear. They are not controlled by the need to dominate or prove their superiority. Softness allows the mind to remain calm when faced with challenges. It allows the body to stay flexible instead of rigid with tension. Weakness, however, is the inability to face life. Weakness shrinks away when difficulty appears, hides behind excuses, or collapses when pressure builds. Softness does not collapse. It adjusts, it bends, it flows. And because of this, it endures longer than anything rigid. In martial arts, softness is often seen as the higher form of mastery. The beginner may rely on force, on muscle, on hardness. They believe strength comes from striking harder, pushing stronger, resisting with more energy. But the master learns that too much hardness creates imbalance. It drains energy quickly. It creates openings for defeat. Softness, however, uses the energy of the opponent. It redirects. It does not fight force with force, but dissolves it and returns it in a different way. This is not weakness. This is wisdom in motion. The same principle applies in life. To be soft is to face harsh words without immediately reacting. To be soft is to listen instead of shouting back. To be soft is to allow change to happen without clinging to the past. Many people think this is weakness because they assume power always looks like control, like domination, like loudness. But true power often appears as silence, as patience, as adaptability. Weakness tries to hide from confrontation, while softness can walk straight into it with clarity and without fear. Weakness seeks escape, softness seeks understanding. Nature itself demonstrates the truth of softness. Look at the trees in a storm. The rigid branches snap, the stiff structures break. But the flexible ones, those that bend and sway with the wind, survive the storm. Rigidity breaks, softness survives. Weakness would be a tree that cannot withstand the storm at all, uprooted and gone. But softness remains, softness endures, and over time, softness grows stronger because it learns to move with the rhythm of life instead of resisting it. On a deeper level, softness is also connected to openness of the heart. A soft heart is not a weak heart. A weak heart closes itself out of fear, hides away to avoid pain, builds walls to protect itself from being hurt. But a soft heart remains open. It feels pain but does not allow the pain to harden it. It experiences loss but does not allow loss to create bitterness. A soft heart understands that life includes joy and sorrow, gain and loss, love and grief. Weakness cannot hold these opposites. Softness embraces them and continues to grow. Softness also allows connection. When one is soft, they can connect to others without the armor of ego. They can meet people as they are, without trying to control, without trying to dominate. Weakness would avoid connection for fear of rejection or attach too strongly out of insecurity. But softness can engage, can love, can give without losing itself. This is why softness is powerful. It does not need to prove anything. It simply is. To live with softness is to recognize that yielding is not the same as surrendering your strength. It is choosing not to waste energy in useless battles. It is choosing to remain calm when others are consumed by anger. It is choosing to listen when others only want to argue. It is choosing to keep your heart open even when life gives you reasons to close it. Weakness cannot make these choices. Weakness gives up. Weakness hides. Softness remains present. In the Shaolin way, softness is a reflection of true inner power. Hardness is sometimes necessary, but without softness, hardness becomes brittle. The strongest fighters, the most balanced individuals, the wisest minds, they all cultivate softness. This is not a softness that collapses under weight, but one that absorbs and transforms the weight into movement. The greatest misconception is believing that to be soft means to be easily broken. But look again at water, look again at the trees, look again at the heart that stays open despite pain. Softness is not fragile, it is resilient. Weakness breaks when life applies pressure. Softness adapts and survives. Softness continues moving, continues flowing, continues growing. Weakness ends, softness transforms. Inner strength is not something that can be borrowed, purchased, or handed down by someone else. It is not dependent on external validation, nor is it built upon the shifting sands of circumstance. Inner strength is the quiet force that lives beneath the surface of every human being, waiting to be recognized, nurtured, and embodied. It is not loud or boastful, and it does not demand to be seen by the world. Rather, it reveals itself most fully in moments of difficulty, in times when everything external seems to fall apart. The presence of inner strength is not measured by how much noise one makes in the face of adversity, but by how deeply one remains grounded, centered, and unwavering when life tests the core of one's being. Inner strength is cultivated through challenges. It grows when life presents weight to carry, obstacles to climb, and storms to endure. Without resistance, there is no reason for strength to emerge. Just as a muscle requires tension in order to expand, the spirit requires difficulty in order to mature. Many people misunderstand hardship, believing it to be a punishment or an unfair burden. Yet in truth, hardship is one of the greatest teachers. Every obstacle that arises is not there to destroy, but to reveal the depth of resilience hidden within. When the mind and body are confronted with difficulty, a choice appears: either collapse beneath the pressure or rise with it. This choice, made repeatedly, builds an unshakable foundation that cannot be taken away by external events. Inner strength also comes from the discipline of the mind. The mind is often restless, pulled in countless directions by distractions, emotions, and desires. A restless mind cannot recognize its own power. It scatters energy outward, leaving little for the cultivation of resilience. To develop inner strength, the mind must be trained like a wild horse, guided by steady hands. Discipline is not about suppression but about alignment. It is the ability to direct attention with clarity, to hold focus when the world tries to pull it apart. A disciplined mind no longer reacts impulsively but chooses responses that arise from awareness and intention. This discipline creates an internal environment where strength becomes natural rather than forced. The source of inner strength also lies in the ability to endure silence. Silence is not emptiness, and it is not weakness. It is the field where clarity arises and energy consolidates. Many people fear silence because it confronts them with themselves. In silence, there are no distractions to hide behind, no noise to cover the weight of inner thoughts. Yet, when silence is embraced, it becomes the well from which true resilience is drawn. It allows the individual to see clearly, to untangle confusion, and to cultivate the calm presence that carries them through chaos. Silence does not make one passive, it makes one unmovable, anchored in a center that cannot be shaken by external noise. Inner strength is not rigid. It is not about building walls so thick that nothing can touch them. True strength is fluid, adaptive, and alive. It bends without breaking, shifts without losing stability, and flows with the currents of life without being swept away. To be rigid is to shatter when pressure becomes too great, but to be strong is to move with the storm while remaining rooted in the ground. This adaptability comes from wisdom, the recognition that control is limited and that life will always bring change. Strength is not in clinging to what cannot be held, but in trusting one's ability to navigate what arises. Another dimension of inner strength is patience. Strength is not always about immediate action or forceful resistance. Sometimes it is the ability to wait, to endure with calmness until the right moment reveals itself. Patience is not passive waiting but active endurance. It is the quiet knowing that storms pass, seasons change, and time reveals truths that cannot be forced. Impatience weakens, creating frustration and desperation. Patience strengthens, creating calmness and trust in the unfolding of life. Inner strength is also deeply connected to self-awareness. To know one's limits, one's fears, and one's patterns is to hold the key to transformation. Many people exhaust themselves fighting battles outside while ignoring the deeper battles within. True strength does not begin in the external world, but in the internal confrontation with one's own shadow. To recognize weaknesses without judgment, to acknowledge fear without surrendering to it, and to move forward despite uncertainty. This is the essence of resilience. Self-awareness prevents the dissipation of energy in unnecessary struggles and directs it toward growth, alignment, and meaningful action. Inner strength reveals itself in the small choices made each day. It is not always dramatic or grand. Sometimes it is simply the decision to rise again after a setback, to continue walking when the path is unclear, or to hold on to integrity when temptation whispers otherwise. These small acts accumulate into a reservoir of unshakable stability. Strength is not about the absence of difficulty, but about the steady endurance through it. It is the quiet persistence that refuses to break down even when the mind whispers doubt. It is important to recognize that inner strength is not a solitary pursuit disconnected from others. While it is cultivated within, it radiates outward, influencing the world silently but powerfully. A person anchored in strength becomes a source of stability for those around them. Their presence alone can calm, inspire, and uplift, just as a tree rooted deeply in the earth provides shade, shelter, and stillness. An individual grounded in inner resilience becomes a refuge for others, not because they force strength outward, but because it naturally flows from within. Inner strength is not about the absence of vulnerability. It does not deny pain, fear, or doubt. It allows space for these experiences without collapsing under them. Strength does not mean pretending to be invincible, but holding oneself steady in the presence of imperfection. It is the balance between openness and resilience, the harmony between softness and firmness. Vulnerability is not weakness when held with awareness. It is part of the foundation that makes inner strength human, authentic, and alive. When we look at the path of growth, one truth stands before us like an immovable mountain. Progress rarely comes wrapped in comfort. Comfort is soft, it is warm, it is familiar. It calls us to stay where we are, to rest in the illusion that what we have now is all we will ever need. Comfort lulls us into believing that there is no need to move, no reason to push, no call to awaken. Yet, discipline speaks a very different language. Discipline whispers not of ease but of effort, not of stillness but of motion, not of clinging but of shedding. Discipline is the decision to step into the unknown, to break through the invisible walls of limitation, and to discover a version of yourself that comfort would never allow you to meet. Discipline demands that you act even when your body resists, even when your mind protests, even when your emotions seek refuge in excuses. It is the ability to choose long-term growth over short-term pleasure, consistency over laziness, focus over distraction. Discipline cuts through the illusion of comfort because it knows that comfort is temporary and fleeting, but strength forged through struggle is lasting. Every person who has ever reached a higher state of being, whether in body, mind, or spirit, did so not by surrendering to comfort, but by aligning themselves with discipline. Comfort whispers, "Stay here, you have done enough." Discipline says, "Take one more step, you are not yet finished." Comfort offers you immediate satisfaction, the rest of the bed, the sweetness of indulgence, the thrill of distraction. Discipline offers you nothing in the moment, yet everything in the end. When you train your body, discipline builds strength. When you train your mind, discipline builds clarity. When you train your spirit, discipline builds freedom. The path of discipline is the path of true transformation, while comfort locks you into the cage of stagnation. Consider the seed buried in the soil. If it clings to comfort, it will never split open, never break apart, never risk the unknown darkness that presses upon it. But when it surrenders to discipline, the discipline of growing roots, the discipline of pushing upward against the weight of the earth, it transforms into a tree. Its branches reach the sky, but only because it endured the discomfort of breaking itself open. In the same way, the human being must be willing to break apart from old habits, from familiar patterns, from the ease of what feels safe if they wish to rise into their higher form. Discipline is not punishment, it is practice. It is the practice of training your energy to serve your vision rather than your impulses. It is the choice to delay comfort now so that you may embody freedom later. Without discipline, freedom is an illusion. Without discipline, transformation is impossible. Every great journey begins with discomfort, because discomfort is the sign that you are stretching beyond your old limits. Comfort is the weight of chains disguised as a soft blanket, while discipline is the fire that burns the chains away. When the mind is undisciplined, it wanders endlessly. It jumps from thought to thought, desire to desire, without direction. It seeks stimulation, distraction, and ease. But when the mind is disciplined, it becomes still like water. It reflects truth clearly, it carries power. It cannot be shaken by small disturbances. The same applies to the body. A body left to comfort grows weak, sluggish, and heavy. A body trained with discipline becomes sharp, strong, and alive. And the spirit, when nourished by discipline, becomes unshakable, radiant, and free. There is a paradox within discipline. At first, it feels like restriction, yet with time it reveals itself as liberation. Comfort feels like freedom in the beginning, but eventually it imprisons you. Discipline requires effort and sacrifice, but what it gives in return cannot be taken away. It is the path to mastery. It is the path to presence. It is the path to power. Every morning that you rise when your body asks you to sleep longer, every time you choose focus when distraction pulls at you, every moment you act in alignment with your higher vision rather than your lower impulses, you are planting seeds of transformation. Discipline is not only about great achievements, it is also about small daily acts. The choice to breathe consciously instead of reacting. The choice to speak with awareness instead of thoughtlessness. The choice to step forward with courage instead of retreating into fear. These choices may seem small, but they build a foundation stronger than any comfort ever could. It is through these repeated acts of discipline that a person transcends their ordinary self and touches the extraordinary. Comfort will always call to you. It will always invite you to remain the same. But the one who chooses discipline chooses growth, chooses evolution, chooses truth. The path of discipline is demanding, yet it is the only path that awakens the hidden power within. For in every moment that you place discipline above comfort, you are breaking free from the prison of what you were and walking toward the possibility of what you can become. Respect is not something that appears from nowhere. It is cultivated, nurtured, and reinforced by the invisible lines we draw around ourselves and others. Boundaries are not walls. They are not meant to shut life out, but they are the framework that shapes how people engage with us and how we engage with the world. Without them, respect becomes diluted, relationships lose balance, and we find ourselves giving more than we can sustain. To set a boundary is to claim one's own worth, to stand firm in self-awareness, and to communicate that worth to those around us. Many people struggle with the idea of boundaries because they mistake them for rejection or selfishness. In reality, the opposite is true. Boundaries are a form of clarity, and clarity itself is respect. When you make clear where you stand, what you accept, and what you do not, you are giving others the gift of honesty. There is no confusion, no hidden resentment, and no silent suffering. This honesty creates the conditions for trust. Respect grows naturally when both sides know the lines that should not be crossed. Boundaries also serve as a mirror of self-respect. The way we teach others to treat us is deeply connected to the standards we uphold. If we allow every demand, every intrusion, every careless word to pass unchallenged, we silently communicate that our energy, our time, and our emotions have little value. Over time, this erodes not only how others see us, but how we see ourselves. But the moment we step into the courage of saying, "This is enough," or "This is not acceptable," we reclaim the dignity that was hidden beneath compromise. Boundaries are not about harshness, they are about self-preservation and balance. In the realm of relationships, boundaries create the space where mutual respect can thrive. Love without boundaries quickly becomes attachment. Care without boundaries easily slips into exhaustion. When you give endlessly without pause, when you say yes without alignment, you are not truly offering from a place of strength, but from depletion. Boundaries ensure that what you give is genuine, sustainable, and rooted in choice rather than pressure. Respect emerges when both sides recognize the effort, the time, and the emotional space each person requires. Boundaries are also deeply connected to discipline. A disciplined life knows when to say no, when to withdraw energy, and when to stand firmly in silence. Discipline is not only about training the body or sharpening the mind, but also about shaping the flow of interactions with others. If energy is the most valuable resource we possess, then boundaries are the gates that determine how that energy is shared. Without gates, there is chaos, intrusion, and waste. With gates, there is order, protection, and direction. Respect begins to flourish when others realize that access to your energy is not unlimited, but guided by principles. The absence of boundaries leads to subtle forms of disrespect that often go unnoticed until they accumulate into pain. a small favor that feels uncomfortable, a conversation that lingers too long, a request that violates personal values. Each of these moments seems harmless on its own, but together they form a pattern. Without boundaries, the pattern becomes a cycle where disrespect normalizes itself. Breaking the cycle requires awareness and the courage to create limits. When those limits are expressed, they do not drive people away, they filter the relationships that are truly aligned with your values from those that are not. It is important to understand that boundaries are not rigid. They are not about control, but about guidance. They can shift with circumstances, expand with trust, or adjust with growth. Flexibility is not weakness, but it must always be rooted in awareness. To have no boundaries at all is to lose shape, to dissolve into the demands of others. To have boundaries is to have form, to stand in a place where others can recognize who you are and how you wish to be treated. Respect is not demanded with words, but invited through the firmness of presence and the consistency of boundaries. Even in solitude, boundaries matter. The boundaries you place upon yourself, how much time you dedicate to distractions, how much energy you allow negativity to consume, how much indulgence you permit at the cost of discipline. These self-boundaries are as essential as the ones you place in relationships. To respect oneself is to master the art of self-limitation, of recognizing what strengthens the spirit and what weakens it. Without such boundaries, life becomes scattered and focus dissolves. With them, direction returns and respect for one's own path deepens. Boundaries also reveal the silent truth that not everyone deserves equal access to your energy. Respecting yourself means understanding that your time and presence are not infinite, that they must be shared with discernment. Some people will honor the space you create. Others will resist it because they benefited from your lack of limits. Yet, the more consistently you uphold your boundaries, the more your circle will shift, and those who remain will be those who see and value you as you are. Respect grows stronger in such an environment where authenticity replaces pretense and balance replaces imbalance. Ultimately, boundaries define respect because they shape the foundation of every interaction, every connection, and every commitment. They remind us that respect is not only about how others treat us, but also about how we teach them to treat us. They are the invisible architecture of dignity, the lines that guard our energy, and the silent language through which self-worth speaks, while the balance of yin and yang is not simply a symbol drawn on paper, nor a concept left in ancient philosophy. It is the very rhythm of existence itself, the pulse that runs through nature, through the body, through thought, and through the unseen. To live in harmony with this balance is to understand that life itself is a dance between opposing yet complementary forces. One cannot exist without the other, just as night cannot be understood without day, and silence has no meaning without sound. Yin and yang are not enemies, they are partners in an eternal dialogue that sustains all creation. When the body moves, it expends energy, and this is yang. When the body rests, it regenerates, and this is yin. Without movement, life stagnates. Without stillness, energy burns out. The breath itself teaches us this lesson every moment. Inhalation brings in a surge of yang, a filling of life force. Exhalation lets go, a descent into yin, a release that allows the cycle to continue. The balance of yin and yang is not only cosmic, but intimate, showing itself in every subtle aspect of our daily existence. Too often, imbalance arises because we lean excessively into one force while neglecting the other. When the mind becomes dominated by yang, constant doing, striving, achieving, there is no room left for reflection, softness, or restoration. This leads to exhaustion, anxiety, and a sense of never arriving. When the mind becomes dominated by yin, too much stillness, withdrawal, or passivity, there is no spark to ignite action, no energy to propel growth forward. Both extremes lead to suffering, but suffering itself is the teacher, guiding us back toward balance. Nature offers endless examples of this truth. The cycle of the seasons embodies yin and yang perfectly. Spring, with its bursting energy and new beginnings, is yang. Autumn, with its fading light and falling leaves, is yin. Summer is the height of yang, expansion and heat, while winter is the depth of yin, contraction and cold. No season tries to dominate, and no season lasts forever. The harmony lies in the transition, the flow from one to the other, the acceptance that change is the essence of life. In the human spirit, the balance of yin and yang is reflected in strength and vulnerability. True strength is not the absence of softness, it is the integration of it. A tree is powerful not because it resists the wind, but because it bends without breaking. A warrior is resilient not only because of discipline and training, but also because of humility and stillness of heart. When we forget this, strength turns rigid and breaks under pressure. When we cultivate both, strength becomes fluid and enduring. The mind, too, requires balance. Rational thought, analysis, and logic carry the yang quality, sharp, direct, outward. Intuition, imagination, and reflection carry the yin quality, soft, inward, receptive. To rely only on reason is to see the world as mechanical and dry. To rely only on intuition is to drift without clarity. Wisdom is born from the marriage of both, from allowing the mind to be sharp when necessary, but soft when required. It is in this balance that clarity arises, not forced but naturally unfolding. Even in relationships, yin and yang reveal themselves. Giving is yang, receiving is yin. To give endlessly without being open to receive creates emptiness. To receive endlessly without offering anything back creates dependency. Harmony is found when both flow together, when the rhythm of exchange is honored. A relationship thrives not because one dominates, but because both sides understand the sacred dance of giving and receiving, of leading and following, of speaking and listening. The imbalance of yin and yang within oneself often shows as internal conflict. A restless mind unable to stop thinking, planning, or worrying is overwhelmed with yang energy. A lack of motivation, apathy, or constant procrastination shows an excess of yin. To realign, one must notice the imbalance and consciously introduce the missing element. For the restless mind, silence, meditation, and grounding are medicine. For the passive mind, movement, action, and discipline are the remedy. Self-awareness is the compass that brings balance back to the center. Breathwork, meditation, martial arts, and mindful movement are practices that naturally restore the balance of yin and yang. The body learns to flow between tension and release, effort and relaxation. In martial practice, the punch is yang, the retreat is yin. In meditation, focus is yang, surrender is yin. Each practice is not about choosing one or the other, but about experiencing the full cycle without resistance. The master is not one who clings to yang or to yin, but one who moves gracefully between both. The symbol of yin and yang contains within it a profound lesson. The seed of one always exists in the other. Within the darkest yin, there is a point of yang. Within the brightest yang, there is a point of yin. This is the truth of life. Joy contains sorrow, and sorrow contains joy. Strength carries weakness, and weakness carries strength. To see only one side is blindness. To embrace both sides is vision. Balance does not mean perfection, but acceptance of the wholeness of experience. The balance of yin and yang also applies to how we view success. Success is yang, the outward achievement, the manifestation of effort. Failure is yin, the inward reflection, the soil where lessons grow. Without failure, success becomes hollow, and without success, failure has no meaning. The two dance together, creating growth, shaping character, and revealing depth. When we resist failure, we resist the very yin that makes success meaningful. In life, the art of balance is not achieved once and for all. It is not a fixed state, but a constant movement. Every day, every hour, balance shifts. The body, the mind, the emotions, all are in flux, seeking equilibrium. To live in balance is not to control the flow, but to participate in it fully, to recognize when to move forward with energy and when to retreat into stillness, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to create and when to rest. Confidence is often spoken about as though it were something one is born with, like the color of one's eyes or the shape of one's hands. People point to those who stand tall, speak with conviction, or act decisively, and they say, "She is naturally confident," or "He has always had that presence." But this is an illusion. Confidence is not a gift handed down at birth, nor is it a permanent possession granted to a chosen few. Confidence is something built step by step, moment by moment, through repeated practice, correction, and the willingness to remain present in discomfort. When we begin to understand confidence as practice, the myth dissolves. The myth says, you either have it or you don't. But practice says, you can learn. Think of a musician. At the beginning, fingers stumble across the strings, sounds are clumsy, and rhythm feels foreign. No one expects mastery on the first attempt. Yet when it comes to confidence, people expect themselves to shine in every situation, to feel calm in unfamiliar environments, to speak clearly under pressure, as if it should happen naturally. The truth is, confidence is rehearsed. It is trained like a muscle. The body and the mind adapt to the repetitions we give them. A person who avoids speaking in front of others will never discover the rhythm of words flowing from their own voice. A person who always hides from new challenges will never see themselves stand strong in the unfamiliar. Each avoidance convinces the mind, I cannot. But each attempt, even if imperfect, plants the seed of growth. To practice confidence is not to perform flawlessly, but to step willingly into the arena again and again, regardless of fear. Confidence emerges from familiarity. When the unknown becomes known through practice, the nervous system relaxes. Imagine walking a path in the forest. The first time you are cautious, unsure where the roots or stones may trip you. The second time your steps are more certain. The 10th time you move with ease, perhaps even noticing the beauty of the trees instead of the ground beneath your feet. Confidence works the same way. At first, every action feels shaky, but repetition creates recognition, and recognition creates assurance. Another misunderstanding is that confidence means the absence of fear. In truth, fear often remains. The difference is that a practiced person does not obey fear blindly. Fear says, stay small, stay hidden. Practice says, take one step anyway. Over time, the voice of fear loses its power because the body remembers, I have done this before and I survived. In this way, practice teaches the mind not to collapse under its own doubts. There is also the element of posture, not just of the body but of the spirit. To practice confidence means to practice presence. Shoulders raised, breathing steady, eyes open. These are not natural states for everyone, but they can be trained. The body leads the mind and the mind leads the body. When you stand with stability, the inner world slowly follows. To hold oneself with care and intention is already a practice of confidence, even when the heart still trembles inside. Many wait for the day when they feel ready, before they act. But readiness is not a prerequisite, it is the result. Confidence is not discovered in isolation, but built through interaction. One must stand in front of others, attempt the skill, take the risk, stumble, rise, and continue. Each repetition shapes the nervous system, strengthens resilience, and layers the quiet knowledge. I can do this. Readiness arrives after doing, not before. The practice of confidence is also the practice of failure. Without failure, practice does not exist. Just as the martial artist falls 1,000 times to learn balance, or the calligrapher spoils countless sheets of paper before achieving fluid strokes, confidence is carved out of errors. Each failure is a lesson, not a verdict. To practice confidence is to embrace imperfection as the training ground of growth. Discipline plays a vital role. Confidence does not grow from random bursts of courage, but from consistent engagement. Daily small actions build the foundation, speaking up in a meeting, holding eye contact, attempting the unfamiliar, choosing not to retreat into silence. These small practices accumulate into something larger. Just as a stone becomes smooth when touched by flowing water again and again, the self becomes steady when polished by repeated acts of courage. To think of confidence as a gift makes one passive, waiting for inspiration or permission. But to see confidence as practice makes one active, responsible for their own growth. It removes the excuse of helplessness. Anyone can begin the practice, no matter how unsteady the first attempts may be. Confidence is not reserved for extroverts, leaders, or performers. It belongs to anyone willing to practice showing up again and again until what was once impossible becomes natural. Confidence practiced becomes freedom. It frees one from hesitation, from the prison of self-doubt, from the constant comparison with others. It creates the space to act authentically without shrinking or inflating. Confidence is the grounded presence that comes not from being gifted, but from being disciplined enough to practice until strength replaces fragility, until calm replaces panic, until stability replaces collapse. When you recognize confidence as practice, you no longer chase it as something external. You approach it the way a monk approaches training, with patience, repetition, and humility. Some days progress is visible, other days it seems absent, but every effort counts. Every step across the shaky bridge teaches the body to trust itself. Every attempt builds memory, and memory builds certainty. Confidence is not a mystery. It is a path walked many times until it becomes familiar under your feet.